He's the agent for Tom Brady. He's Don Yee, who joins us on the program. Don, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Dan.
What is the message that you want to impart to people today to come on? Because obviously you'd have to have Tom's blessing to be able to do these interviews. So what is it, the message that you want to give?
I think the message I really want to give is for people just to carefully read the report, and when they read the report, read it critically and try to understand the inferences and conclusions drawn by the investigators and ask yourself, could they have reasonably drawn a different inference or conclusion given the same facts?
Do you think it's a witch hunt?
Boy, those are strong words, Dan. I do think that there's something about this that is just very, very sad, because even the report states that after 3.5 months of an investigation and millions of dollars spent and dozens upon dozens of people interviewed, and I think many Patriots employees gave up cell phones to be examined and hard drives to be examined, the investigators still concluded in their report that it was just more probable than not, which means in lawyer language that's 50.1% versus 49.9%, essentially a coin flip. And if you read the report carefully, they never stated that they were absolutely certain about their findings. They didn't state they were virtually certain. They didn't state they were substantially certain. They stated more probable than not. And so I really don't know what the league is going to do, if anything. I read the report feeling like, well, if you draw a couple inferences here and a couple other conclusions here slightly differently, you get a completely different result than what the investigators got. And so if the league is going to do something on what is essentially a coin flip, a maybe resolution by their own investigators, I would say that would be very, very unfair.
But you brought up the word sting. You attach that to this, that this is a sting.
Well, I attached that to it because the report, again, on its own, brought that word up on page 46 in a footnote. They went out of their way to say it wasn't a sting. And when I looked at the facts that the report states, I mean, the investigators gathered the facts. The investigators stated that the facts show that the Colts contacted the league office a day before the game. About 5 other high-level league executives discussed this amongst themselves. They alerted Walt Anderson, the game referee, on the day of the game. But nobody thought perhaps we should at least, as a gesture of fairness for a significant competition, perhaps we should at least reach out to Robert Kraft or Bill Belichick prior to the start of the game.
He's Don Yee. He's the agent for Tom Brady, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Did Tom participate or know about a plan to deflate those footballs?
No.
Have you talked to him about it?
Yes, we talk regularly.
Why is he going through it? What is the process Tom is going through?
Well, he's human like everybody else. This is, again, the only word I can use is sad. There's no other word I can use to describe this, because I agree with Bill Simmons. We live in a sports culture now of just complete extremes, and I also agree with what you said earlier, that the rules we're talking about here are quite technical. And in fact, I believe that the rule book has a fine for tampering with footballs, and the fine amount is $25,000, which in today's NFL is fairly small relative to some of the other fines that have been given out.
But when Tom says he's going through the process, he said he didn't have a reaction last night when asked by Jim Gray.
I believe he was alluding to the league going through a process, and that he's part of the process.
Have you spoken to the league?
No.
Can you get deep on this, though, Don, and sue for defamation? I mean, if you're totally innocent here, this stays with Tom the rest of his career, the rest of his life.
It does.
So he's labeled a
the
cheater.
Part about it.
Would you consider, if he's suspended, finish that sentence?
Can you repeat that again, Dan? I'm sorry.
If he's suspended, if Tom is suspended, what will you do?
Well, I don't want to get into hypotheticals. We'll have that discussion. There are a range of things to consider.
But you have to do hypothetical.
Very nuanced. Go ahead.
But you do have to do hypothetical as his agent because you got to look at best case, worst case scenario here.
Right, but I'm going to keep those hypotheticals in between my ears for the time being.
Okay. Do you think that Tom will be suspended?
I agree, actually, with the discussion I think you had with Bill Simmons. I don't know if it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I believe the league is gauging public reaction to this, and I think that's going to dictate how they proceed. I think that's unfortunate. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that I'm completely wrong about that.
Help me with understanding Tom's cooperation with the Wells report, the testimony or lack thereof that was included, not included in the Wells report. How cooperative was Tom?
We were very cooperative. They actually requested that we only appear on one day. We all met at Gillette Stadium. They brought 4 attorneys. The interview lasted basically the entire day. He answered every question. They confronted him with text messages. He went through that for them in detail. And I didn't object to a single question, even though I was there. There were no conditions placed on the interview.
Why didn't he surrender his phone?
Well, I don't want to get into all the reasons for that because then we're going to go down a different path, and that'll gobble up all this airtime. But we knew that at least in the interview, they could observe his body language, question him about his own phone, also present him with a transcript of the texts between the other employees, and they did query all of that.
What's the one part of the Wells report that you have a hard time arguing the counter to?
When you mean that, you're saying what would be my counter argument to it?
Yeah, is there something in there that you look at and you say, okay, I understand where that could be damning, or we might not have an answer for that. Do you have an answer for everything that's in the Wells report?
I don't have an answer for everything in the report, particularly the scientific part. That part was difficult to get through and digest. I think a lot of scientists disagree on that. In fact, I've been getting emails from scientists from all over the country explaining physics and evaporation and things of that nature. And in fact, the Wells report's own experts could not come to a conclusion themselves.
But, Don, doesn't this come down to, did the ball boy go in and take those footballs and spend 90 seconds in a bathroom deflating them to Tom's liking? Really, that's what this comes down to, isn't it?
That's it. I think that's one reasonable way to look at it, and it seemed from the report that they didn't have any direct evidence of that.
Yeah, because I think what it comes, I think the rule is silly. But if it doesn't matter if you broke a rule, then they're going to come down hard on you. Plus, if you stonewall them, as the Saints found out, they're going to come down on you extra hard. And I just don't know why they would go after Tom Brady. The golden boy. They may not like the Patriots, or maybe other owners have a problem with him. That's the hard part I have in saying that this is a witch hunt for Tom Brady.
And that's why I didn't want to use those words. But I think this particular event concerns footballs, and he happens to handle the footballs, and so he's going to be the subject of the discussion.
But do you think they'd go after him, though, Don? That this is more about Brady and the Patriots than it is the actual, if quarterback X does this, that they're going to go after him as strongly?
Well, they've certainly been a high-profile team for a long time, Dan, and you've been in the sports business your entire life, and you see how the sausage is made behind the scenes in terms of personal feelings about this or that, and rivalries and wins and losses. And it's not pretty, actually. And I'm glad that you have a show to illuminate these issues.
You represent Tom and also Jimmy Garoppolo, the backup quarterback. Which one of your clients is starting opening night?
I hope it's Tom. I hope it's Tom because I don't see a basis given the findings in the Wells report, for a significant punishment. I think a reasonable person could also conclude, based on this report, that nothing happened, that the deflation occurred due to atmospheric conditions.
Has Jimmy Garoppolo privately said, Don, can you ease up a little bit on protecting Brady? I'd like to get this start opening night.
It would make for good radio, but I'd be breaching attorney-client privilege.
You're a good agent. Good luck fighting the fight. Have they told you when you can expect some news from the home office?
No, not at all. I don't know. Maybe this segment with you precipitates a call.
But you haven't heard from it. I heard next week that you'll hear from the league office.
I suspect it could be as early as 1 p.m. Eastern today.
It could be as early as like in a minute you could hear from them.
Yes.
Well, Tom.
Yes, I've always said, Dan, the NFL is the fourth branch of government. So,
is Tom planning on talking to the commissioner no matter what is said here, ruled here?
He hasn't been invited to speak to the commissioner, which actually I'm a little surprised about. I thought that Roger actually might reach out to him, but he has not heard.
Now, reach out after the Wells report or prior to?
Right now, after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he want to talk to the commissioner?
We haven't gotten into that, and but I certainly think that if the commissioner reached out, he would be receptive.
Knowing Tom, and now when he says he has no reaction, I know that he has a reaction and a visceral one, and he's probably as fired up, as angry as possible here. He's not that, hey, I'm just going to smile and everything's okay and I got unconditional love at home. He's got to be downright PO'd.
I think there are a lot of emotions, and you know him as a competitor, and this report, it's very difficult for us to accept, at least the conclusions, because the investigators, they did their job. They were handed an assignment. Ted Wells is a fine man. I enjoyed his company. They just did their job. It's just the conclusions that were reached we're having difficulty with.
I have a feeling we're going to talk next week, Don.
I enjoy your company too, Dan.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, thank you.
It's Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent.